the more acclaim that comes, it gives me a reason to work harder. And this group and everyone is working so hard. I think we're working even harder this season because of the success that it's had. It's like you ain't seen nothing yet.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Edwin Lee Gibson is an actor. He sat down with me in cyberspace to talk about the work. Do you have a typical way that you like to begin your preparation process when you get a new character?
Well, thanks for having me, first off. And it's always good to talk about the vocation in different ways. I tend to learn things the more I talk about them, or the more I teach them. I used to teach kids, and I used to say the best thing about that was that you've got to be so clear. And so the more I say it, the more I hear it. So, but to answer your question, no, there's not one typical way that I go about it. It really kind of depends on the character. If I'm doing work for the screen or doing work for the stage, it's very, very different. If I'm playing someone who existed that no longer exists, or someone that is still alive, so there are all these kind of variables. I try to listen to the text as much as possible. I'm not so interested in just doing something. There was this adage I heard early on in the theater back in Houston, where I grew up: "Don't just do something, stand there." Which is kind of a reverse of don't just stand there, do something.
Yes.
So, and that really made me begin to listen to the text, and really kind of figure out what the character needs, what the story is. I don't worry about memorizing lines so much as I think about understanding the story. Think that lines will come, and they do at some point. But that's really it. I don't know if that's a good starting place. There's no typical way except to just listen. As long as my wants and desires for the character mesh with what the character needs, I'm cool. But the moment that my wants and desires begin to kind of supersede what the character needs, then I know that I've got to kind of pull back and kind of go back to listening again. Because, we can get caught up and kind of get ahead of the game a little bit sometimes.
It seems like what you're saying is like listening is really, really important. It's already important, even in the preparation process for you. Anybody who understands this work at a certain point understands the importance of listening, and true listening as if you don't know what the words are that are coming,
Mm-hmm.
But you're talking about it right off the bat, listening to the text. And you're using the word listening. It's interesting to me because you're not saying I'm looking at the text. I'm looking at the text. You're already getting in the process of listening.
Yeah, and I want to give the director what the director wants, but I also have an idea when I step into the room or I step on set. I've already done some work, so then my thing is to listen to whether the director understands the story as well. I'm a great playwright. August Wilson had this great way of framing things. He says it's a point in the process that the writer knows more about the piece than the director and the actor. Then it becomes a point in the piece that the director knows more about the piece than the writer or the actor. Then there should come a point that the actor knows more about the piece than the writer or the director. That doesn't mean that the collaborative framework flies out the door. It's one of the things I learned with working with Peter Brook. I lived in Paris. He asked me to join the theater company back in 2017, and there was another thing. It's just that collaborative effort, but a director knowing when to give over, and an actor knowing when to give over to a director. I also love writers. I just love writers. I've never felt the desire to mark up a writer's punctuation or get rid of stuff. I want to understand why they wrote it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I align with everything, because I have questions, but they're questions for the writer about the story, not about what's comfortable for me.
I always had a real big question mark in my mind about why actors jump so fast and remove that stuff before they are really getting their arms around it, right? I mean, you want to understand it first, then maybe remove it if it's not serving you or something, or if it's getting you stuck. But wouldn't you want to see that first?
But yeah, I mean, I like to ask, I'll ask a writer their permission, no matter what I think of the piece. There's a reason that they wrote it a certain way. There's a reason I signed on for it. And so I'll ask a question. I'll always ask a writer the question. I'll challenge a director in a different way. But I'll ask a writer the question, and I'll challenge them on it, but it's always in the form of a question.
Yeah.
And I'll also, do some things to kind of show what I'm thinking. And sometimes people don't realize what they've written.
Yeah, I bet.
I mean, in a good way.
Yeah. It probably opens their eyes when you start asking questions.
Or when you can show them something and
Yeah.
say, I really think this is what you wrote, because this is how it tracks to here. And again, it's all comes back to my listening to, to what's happening. My best efforts are to serve the story and the character in the end.
Right. You mentioned Peter Brook, and I'm just fascinated. I mean, so when you get this call to join such a legendary director's company, one can think, wow, like, what does somebody like you have to learn at this point after all of this? But I'm almost, I can't even get that out without laughing. I mean, because I know there is no end to learning in this work. But especially though, probably when you're going to work with somebody like that, tell me what that was like at your stage in your career to be working with that kind of guy. And we just lost him not too long ago.
About a year and a half ago. Yeah, well, I was doing a play in Chicago. The writer of the piece had worked with Peter Battlefield based on the Mahabharata. They were doing the U.S. tour, and they came to Chicago, and so they came to see the show. And his collaborator was here. He wasn't traveling every place. He was in Minneapolis because they were going there after Chicago, and the collaborator. His collaborator, Marie-Hélène Etienne, sent me an email the next day after they had seen the show, asking me if I would make a tape. And I only met her for like a minute and said, hi, hello. And so apparently she had gotten on the phone to Peter after the performance, and then they asked if I would make a tape. And so I made a tape, and then consequently they asked if I would come to Minneapolis on my off day to meet Peter. And I was like, yeah, sure. And so I get there and I read for him, and he does this. He's a really, really beautiful, beautiful cat. He takes my hand and he asked me to have lunch. And so we go have lunch there at the Guthrie Theater, luncheon area in Minneapolis. And he asked me to join his company, and I just saw it as an opportunity to learn. I like to say I only knew as much about acting as the last gig I did. Mm. That's all I want to know. Mm. I'm trying to stay a 6-year-old that's always a sponge.
Yeah.
I don't want to know anything. I just want to listen and learn. So I get there and we go over, and we're working at the National first. And the great Donald Sumter is there. I remember this one scene that Donald and I were doing together, and Peter stopped us and just reamed us out.
Whoa.
And he reamed Donald Sumter out first. And I'm like, here's Donald Sumter, this cat that I've always loved as an actor. And I was waiting on my turn. I was like, I want some of that.
What was it about?
It was just about we didn't really listen to everything he was saying about what he wanted us to do. Mm-hmm. We began to improvise a scene, and it went in a direction that he didn't think it should go. Mm-hmm. He illustrated to us why it shouldn't. And is really, really great because it was indicative of the fact that I've got that I want to learn. It wasn't just a reaming for reaming's sake or because of his
Right.
age.
Right.
It was really because he saw something and we had totally missed the mark. But that's one of those things. It's like realizing that you have more to give, you have more to receive, and if you can stay in that place, whether the director is as as experienced as learned as aged as Peter was, or whether he is as young as this really these two great directors I'm working with on The Bear, Christopher Storer and Joanna Callow.
Yeah.
Um, when I'm very intense on whether I can trust, directors or not. I don't think actors should be left to their devices. Left to their devices, we're going to screw it up. So, directors are very, very necessary. But to have a director that you can trust and that understands what they're doing and how to articulate it to you, even if I have an idea of things, if I see that a director knows, I'm willing to take everything that I have and toss it out the window.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just fill it back up with them. Because like I said, I come in with something. But when you can trust a director and then like going over to we worked at the going back to Peter, we worked at the Booth Dunot Theater in Paris. And we toured this piece throughout the world. And he didn't travel with us all the time, but just, him and I sitting in one of my great memories is him and I sitting in the lobby of a hotel in Paris, just having a couple shots of drinks and just talking about why we both believe Othello is about love and it's not about race. It's reductive to call it a play about race.
Yeah.
It's a play about love.
Yeah.
And what Othello does to, Desdemona, it's out of an act of love. And we see, we can kind of see that as an overt kind of act of love, as coarse and as sad as it is. But you don't really think about, Iago and what he does. And I've always felt like if you make both Othello and Iago brown skin,
that's
you start
interesting.
to hear the play. You start to hear the play very, very differently.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think there's something physically that happens to Iago the more he does this, because it takes something out of you. So by the time he stops speaking at the end of the play, because if you remember, at the very end, he doesn't say a word. So Peter and I being able to sit there and just really kind of dig to that, because I had that conversation, but folks I speak to in the States world will like talk me down about, no, it's about race because this. And I was like, yeah, I see, but I think Shakespeare was a lot more savvy than that.
Do you think that Brook had his wheels turning about you with Othello?
I'm not sure. We did talk about me moving from that show to another show that was going to be premiering in Paris, but they decided to keep me in Battlefield. But that would have been really, really nice to work with him again. And he was just an amazing, amazing person. And he and Maria Helene created a lot of things over 40 years of working together.
Amazing.
So it was just that was like one of the highlights of my career. And like you say, you think someone wouldn't think there's anything more to know. I'm always approaching things with the idea of what else I will learn.
And you mentioned the idea that you need to trust this person, this director, and it doesn't matter their experience level, but you've done so many productions. I'm sure there was many times when you felt all alone, or you couldn't trust this person. What do you do in those situations? Like, we're talking about the opposite of Peter Brook here.
Yeah. I mean, you sign up for the gig and, you do the gig and you know more about the text, then you may know about who's directing. We've all done some train wrecks. I mean, I've done 103 productions. I've done some train wrecks. Some I didn't know, some I knew going in.
Mm.
And it's like, like a relationship. I can change this. uh, uh, but I think, you just always lock in on the story. That's when those things happen, you lock in on the story. I have never, and I will never change the direction when the play opens and the director leaves. I'll never do that to another artist, no matter how much I disagree with them.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have those conversations then. And if I'm not going to do something, I'm not going to do it in rehearsal. I'm not going to wait till you leave and then not do it.
Right.
But yeah, in those situations, you just try to find that commonality with why you both took the job. That's the most I can give with that, because it does get a bit hairy. It does get a bit sticky. But we're all artists and we all miss the mark at some point.
You just plow through somehow.
Yeah. I mean, none of us as artists, directors, writers, actors, none of us nail it every time.
Yeah.
And
because you say 103 theatrical productions, at this point you must have an idea of the situation or the material, the elements that work to bring out the best in you.
I don't know that I've done my best. I used to be very hard on myself. I'm fair now. I'm fair with myself.
You've transitioned to fair after all these years.
Yeah. My dad was a garbage man from Mississippi. He had all these sayings, one of which was, "It's hard, but it's fair." And I remember, I had to, at a certain point, be kinder, to myself. I don't like not knowing anything, but it's fine that I don't know a lot. So I got over that in my 20s. I once had a director threaten to recast me, Dr. Joe C. Palmore in Houston. He threatened to recast me if I didn't take it easier on myself.
Wow. Wow.
That was like 21, 22.
So you were really beating yourself up enough that he had to intervene.
Yeah, basically. I was doing a play called Home. I was doing Home by Sam Art Williams. It's a 3-person play. Cephas Miles is the character. He never leaves the stage from the beginning to end. 2 other actors played multiple roles. And I broke a mirror in the dressing room because I was kind of bothered with myself.
Wow. When you break a mirror, that is a sign that you got a problem with yourself.
Well, yeah. But it was never about another actor. It was about me. And I could hear him in the theater tell the stage manager, and he said it loudly enough that I could hear it. "Would you please go and tell Edwin that if he doesn't take it easy on himself, I'm going to recast him." It's the worst thing I could hear. I was scared shitless at that moment.
Yeah.
And so it was at that moment I began to make change. But I think the fact that I'm a stutterer is kind of my secret weapon. I don't say I grew up as a stutterer. I am a stutterer. It doesn't really appear when I'm working, but I think understanding what speech does, what my speech did as a kid, like understanding that from a young age, made me run towards language as opposed to running from language. Like some stutterers would like run from language.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is fucking cool. Everybody's got a certain speech pattern, because that's what stuttering is.
Right.
It's a function of your speech pattern. And so then I was like, wait a minute. If that's the case, then that means these characters in these plays have different speech patterns. And so that, coupled with the fact that my favorite subject has always been mathematics, now you can go in and try to understand
Approach it
what
mathematically. Yeah.
speech, music, rhythm,
Yeah.
text, all that stuff. So I think I've still got this kind of this adoration for language and figuring out the Rubics associated with the characters and their rhythm and the rhythm of scenes and the rhythm of text. So,
Yes.
so I think that's one of the things. Maybe some really fine directors have seen that approach, and I never studied theater.
Wow.
Like a year and a half. I never studied acting, but a year and a half in high school was all the formal training I've had.
Wow.
Um, I was a mathematics major in college. My plan was to play in the major leagues, and then in the off season be in the theater.
Yeah.
But yeah. So my best hasn't come. It's really kind of an ebb and flow of what work excites me, intimidates me, frightens me, which is kind of masochistic because as you get older, your muscle changes
Yeah.
and you're not as quick as you used to be. But now, what I want are those things that scare me the most.
What is it about being scared that is necessary to the work for you?
It doesn't allow for being complacent. Like after a while, you despite one's best efforts, you do something enough, you can. There's a propensity. Well, there's the for me there's the fear of ever going on autopilot,
Right.
and I don't necessarily like things that are close to me anyway. But I don't want to go on autopilot. So if I can find these works that challenge me and that push some different elements of my brain to keep my brain active, then those are the things that I really want to do. I've also taken to not when I over the past 7-8 years, I'd done this thing where I would never read the second act of a play. I wouldn't hear it until the first table read.
Wow.
Just to keep myself there.
Right. But
So I might
that in itself is kind of scary.
yeah, I know. I mean, I do it to myself. I'm a fucking idiot.
Now, no. Now you're really talking about masochism here. Now,
Yeah, I
I
know.
mean that
I'm a fucking idiot. Fucking idiot.
but it's working.
But not a lot of people have heard me say that.
I see.
I've never really said that.
Right.
You're one of the few that I've actually said that
I
to.
appreciate that. But I mean, that's fascinating though. And I think we can understand the reasoning for it. But then once you hear it, then you have a lot of work to do to kind of catch up. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't mind things being simple. I don't necessarily want them to be easy. I'm not going to complicate them just for the sake of complicating them either. That's something else that I'm not interested in doing either. It's I'm not trying to make the work more difficult for myself. I just want to make sure that I'm engaged.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah. I'm starting to think there's something to this because especially with the second act, you're battling with your urge to survive it. You don't want to just survive it.
Yeah, and also one of the things I learned early on as an actor was that the answers that you may want of a character may not appear right in that scene. Like I found the answers to certain questions about a character towards the end of the play.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that tracks back. And there's a great book by David Ball, Backwards and Forwards. It's a book for directors, but I used to carry it around in my bag. And it's about reading play backwards and forwards.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And you can kind of like see what's missing. And, it's like when you read Seven Guitars by August Wilson, when you read that backwards, you really see why the main character disappears in the second act. It's really, really great. thing. And so a collaborator that I worked with, Daphne Richards in New York, we created a lot of stuff together with my solo work. She had the book. And I think I took it and just never gave it back to her. Uh, but
She's gonna listen to this and now know where it is, so she'll come
well,
after it.
no. Well, she knows. Well, she knew where it was. She just wasn't getting it back. I think she bought another one at some point, but and so I'll use whatever advantage I can get.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Speaking of solo work, when I just brought up the image of you as Dick Gregory in Turn Me Loose, in that one still image, someone could accidentally think that is Dick Gregory. And I don't understand what it is. It's something about your shoulders or something. When you're playing somebody that was alive, are you studying their physicality and trying to enter that into your body? And is that a big part of it?
I'm not trying to imitate anyone. I have this thing, and kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. I like to let the character find me. And so when we did Turn Me Loose at Arena Stage, I think that was 2018. So I think it's the first piece I did coming back to the States. I got offered that job over the phone by the great Jack Doolan. Uh, um, and what I wanted was I just wanted pictures of him in the room. So there were all these pictures in the rehearsal room. And I just look at the pictures.
Mm.
I loved him growing up as a kid. But didn't think I would ever get to play him. But I just want to look at the pictures and just say, tell me what to do. And I just kind of, it's kind of a weird there's no real kind of tangible thing I can give, no actory thing, because I didn't go to university for it. I didn't study it. But I like to let the character find me. Like I've got a piece that's coming up when I'm finished shooting here in Chicago in the Bear. I'm working on a piece with Will Power, who wrote the piece that I got the Obie for in 2006, playing Oedipus. He's written this great fascinating piece about the relationship between Muhammad Ali and Step and Fetch It.
Oh, wow.
And I'm playing Step. It's going to be one of those things where I just have to let him find me. I'm not trying to do an imitation of him because that only lasts for so long. So I don't know. I wish I could be more help there.
And that's what, this is one of those times where I don't really understand what you mean by let him find me, but I don't want to know. And I don't want to keep asking you, because it sounds like you're just, you're doing it on another plane. Like, let's just not even go there. You're doing it somehow.
I really wish I could say,
if you figure it out, it probably will go away.
Well, yeah, I just look at the pictures and I would just say, Baba, Gregory, Baba, tell me what to do.
Wow.
And so that's really what I did. I didn't watch much video of him because I didn't want to start to mimic.
Yeah. Yeah. The Bear feels like, as soon as I put it on, I was like, whoa, these people are all alive. All these characters are alive in this room right now. The camera is picking them up. There's nobody play acting what they're doing here. I don't know how they're getting this. What's the secret to this show feeling so organically alive with the characters?
I think the lack of pretense. I mean, it's not trying to be anything except what you said. It's a wonderful thing that Christopher, who created it, has done, is to just kind of, capture these people in media res, always. But I think it's just trying to show that I think the creators understand what Chicago is and what people in Chicago are. And I know I wanted people to really wonder whether the guy playing Ebraheim was even an actor.
Yeah.
It was just some guy they found.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think that's the thing that helps it. There are all these little nuances amongst this cast, the makeup of the cast, the way the cast looks, uh, even down to the fact that something I've spoken about a couple of times. I don't think anybody's really latched onto is the fact that there are these things associated with brown skinned men on screen, and if you notice, everyone's a bit all over the place except the two brown skinned men. Marcus and Ebraheim are just, they're unscathed. They don't get really bent out of shape. And I think it's a very interesting thing for how shows are done that, depict people that look like me. And, kudos to Christopher and Joanna and, Tyson, who's the producer, for being able to kind of allow this personage without any affecting thing, because I wasn't going to read for it originally because I thought it might be tropey.
Right.
But then I have to challenge myself. I'm like, well, the trope only exists if I allow it.
Interesting. Do you think that actors should think that way, like about that? Like, is there a way for you, if it was tropey, to change it yourself?
Well, it could have been tropey.
Yes.
Actually. But the network didn't want that.
Thank God. Yeah.
But that was one of the things that a couple of people at FX and development came up to me and said, was that your audition was different from everyone else's. Because it's not, that's not where the humor lies. The humor lies in going back to what you were asking about, why it feels the way it does. It's not trying to be a comedy.
Right.
It just is.
Yeah.
And wonderful work that the cast is doing on that, collectively. But then when you look at them individually, what Jeremy is doing, the space he's being given to really kind of spread his wings. And then Liza and I are old friends from New York theater.
Yeah, sure.
Liza and I have known each other. I don't want to age her, so I won't say how long we've known each other. But
going back to the Labyrinth Theater, probably something like that, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And she and I didn't even know each other was on the project.
Whoa.
We showed up. Yeah, and I hadn't seen her in like 12 years.
Wow.
And we just picked up right where we left off.
Yeah.
And so many people were like, wow, you guys have such great chemistry. And we finally had to tell them, well, we know each other. And even the way this character is described, a mystery who has lived 1,000 lives. That's all that's written about.
How could you not? Yeah. That's so much to put in there, right?
Exactly. And so, and so I was like, wow, yeah.
It sounds like they really want everyone to be adding something to these roles that bring it alive. And that's what we get to see.
Yeah, no dead way. I don't think on a show like this, I don't think you would last if they didn't trust you. I think they wrote it a specific way. And I think they did a really great job of casting this show.
But wait, here's the important question, because you're right in it, and you came in on your day off here to talk to me, which I appreciate, but you're still filming it. But the question really is this. This show has been a big success. There was so many people talking about it on my Twitter feed that I'm like, what the hell is this? It just took over, and it didn't have, it came out of nowhere. It wasn't like some big stars in it, and that's why people were talking about it. Or it wasn't because it had some kind of concept that made everyone talk about it. It literally was being talked about because it was good. But the big question is, has this success gone to everybody's head in this season in front of these cameras?
No, we're just digging in. It's one of those things, and I love it so much because it's, in some ways, mirrors how I feel about things. It's like the more acclaim that comes, it gives me a reason to work harder. And this group and everyone is working so hard. I think we're working even harder this season because of the success that it's had. It's like you ain't seen nothing yet. What the writers have done this season, it's something really, 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 really cool, and it's really great to go. I show up when I don't have to work that day.
Wow. That
Yeah.
says something right there.
Yeah. And I'm kind of bummed when they're shooting and they don't have space for me to come and hang out.
That's
But
amazing.
but yeah, it's a really, really special piece. Um, and everyone has come back and approached it with the same fervor, same zeal. Um, that's a baseline of last season, and we all like each other. So
That says so much too.
yeah, yeah.
Edwin Lee Gibson, thank you so much for coming in on your day off here to talk to me. I want you to come back on this show.
Sure. Thank you.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham, formerly IFP. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.